Medfield TV is all set. Excellent, so we can start. Welcome everybody to the Select Board meeting for October 3, 2023. And I guess is this really officially Indian summer now that I think we're in fall?
No, we don't use that term anymore.
We start by announcing that we're video recording, and we take a moment to appreciate our troops who are serving around the globe. Thank you. And our first item is to discuss and potential vote on the town administrator performance evaluation. And we had a matrix of evaluating Christine on all of the goals that she had had. And the consensus evaluation was very strong. I don't seem to have my sheet in front of me. It was 100% from meeting the goals by one of the select board members. It was a 92.3% average among the three select board members. It was 100%, 91%, and 86% were the different evaluations of the goals. And these were the goals that were set a year ago. And I know from two of us that we're recommending that Christine get the full $10,000 bonus that her contract calls for. And I don't know your opinion on that, Eileen, but I'm guessing.
You can go with a yes.
Yeah, all right, so we're in agreement that, that Christine should get the full $10,000 bonus that the contract provides. I think that what I told Christine when I met with her, that it's been a pleasure to watch how she's taken over and run the budget process. I mean, that's sort of the essential part of the town that has to function properly, and that has worked really well. And she's opened up the doors to that in ways that it wasn't before, and put it online, and so that it's it's very refreshing to have it. And there's so many compliments to you as well from the warrant committee, so it's very impressive. And then we're getting all this other stuff done as well, so we're appreciative, so thank you. Anything else, Gus, do you want to start?
Just for anybody who's listening and hears something less than 100% of the goals that are tied to the bonus, one of the things from my standpoint that's important is that our town administrator not be bureaucratic in pursuing goals when there's other more important things that have come up over the course of the year. And I can assure you there are more important things that have come up over the year, which I think Christine has done a stellar job on. So the fact that not everybody voted completely 100%, but certainly high on just the pure goal accomplishment, almost doesn't really recognize the true contribution, in my opinion, around the reactions to really important things in the town that I think Christine's done a stellar job with. So more compliments.
Thank you.
Yeah, Eileen?
No, well, I'll be transparent. I'm the one that I did score at 100%. I think you did an outstanding job. I'll echo what Gus just said, and what's part of why I believe that what was assigned to you you've done is that you do above and beyond. It's like if we tasked you with everything you do every day when you walk in here for way beyond the 40 hours in any given week, this would be a 8-page document, right? So when I look at this, and I kind of go back to my sales days, you know, we have to put out some goals that we ask you to strive towards, but there's so many. So I just applaud the leadership you provide here. There's been a lot of changes as we've been shuffling around with new planners, and even just being shorthanded as you were at certain points, and you still juggled it well. That I say kudos to you, and I stand behind the bonus 110%.
So you're recommending 110%?
Next. Just want to make sure you listen to that invitation.
So I just want to say, thank you for the support, your vote of confidence. I am honored, and I hope it shows that I'm honored to be the town administrator in Medfield. Every day when I walk through the doors, I think, what can we do better? And the most important thing for everybody to recognize that it's not just me, it's not just my department heads, It's all the employees that contribute to our success, and they're the ones answering the question when I say, what can we do better? So this, I appreciate the support, but really my team is just incredible. When you appointed me in 2019, we had a long list of ideas, changes, things we wanted to do. And COVID, for sure slowed us down on all of that. Our priorities shifted, but I feel, the GFOA budget award this year, as Pete mentioned, our increased budget transparency, having a dedicated person doing our communications. I really feel like this year is the year we're really starting to get all of the things done that I talked about back in 2019. So we're really looking forward to fiscal year 25. So thank you.
So I guess our next discussion then is of goals for you for going forward. I'm not putting my finger on mine, unfortunately.
I just put a new one in front. Oh, I don't know what your goals, but I just put a new draft in front
all
of
right.
you.
All right,
Just handed it out.
thank you.
So I updated this. I included, under the second goal, providing the quarterly update to the select board on contracts and projects that were authorized by the select board. And then I've added the new goal, to assist you in carrying out your statement against oppressive actions and speech directed at individuals and groups. So that's where we, did the task for the dedicated phone line in the town administrator's office. I noticed a typo in there, so I apologize. The one goal that was still outstanding is there was still some debate on what you wanted to include for environmental quality and sustainability of the community. So I know that discussion, I think that's the last part we need to settle this evening.
Right, and that's sort of the moving the Tomcat forward. Gus, did you want to start on that?
Sure, that is, I just want to make sure that's what we were talking about, was moving the Tomcat forward. I think I've probably already said what I've had to say about this, which is the Tomcat as a document is not really an action plan, given that we have an energy committee that's taking on the advice of the town. It doesn't make sense for me to move Tomcat over onto Christine's shoulders, because I just don't think, she has as many things she has to worry about. I don't think that's a feasible thing to do, and I would kind of like to see the Energy Committee continue to take the stewardship of that plan, seeing as they were the ones that took the initiative to create it. Having said all that, Christine, the one thing I would like you to comment on this is, with the funding that we have for the Sustainability Coordinator, there's kind of, the way I'm looking at it, there's a couple things. There's work, I think, to be done around identifying specific actions that we as a town should take to move toward achievement of the 2050 goals around net zero. That, I think, is the Energy Committee's role, to advise us on the things that we should as a town be doing to move in that direction. I think the Energy Committee has identified a general philosophy around how they're approaching that in terms of both pushing the town, but also encouraging the citizens of the town to do things at the points in time when people are making important decisions about replacing equipment. I think that's totally a good thing for the Energy Committee to be doing. So there's the plan side of it, that's one piece for me. There's kind of the execution of specific project side of it, and this is the part I guess I'd like I want to be sure I understand what your concept for the Sustainability Coordinator that the town would bring on board would be. It makes sense to me that the Sustainability Coordinator would be the one when projects in town have been identified. We're certainly not going to keep looking at the Energy Committee to drive those. It's got to be inside the town. So that's where I would see the handoff being on that. And the only part that I think is important, that's over and above those two things, is I do think there's value in the town, at least over some year or two, identifying, I'll call it a dashboard for lack of a better word, but basically, how are we doing? There should be some sort of a monitoring system that tells us how we're actually doing on those environmental priorities that we have. I personally don't think that's only carbon. So just to be clear, I think this is the environmental issues the town should be thinking about are broader than that. And that part, right now, I would lean toward the Energy Committee taking that on, or maybe they already have it in the sense that they're the ones that have been generating the information that we have to date on carbon and things like that. But I'm sort of open, and maybe we don't figure it out this year. Maybe we need a year to sort out where the dashboard comes from. But I do think we should look at having something that provides us with visibility over how we're doing over the things that we say we're doing something. Part of that I kind of would like to hear a little more on. You just heard how I'm thinking of it. If you're thinking about it differently, I'd appreciate hearing it.
No, I think the dashboard is definitely one of the things we've talked about. In terms of the sustainability coordinator, when I met with Penny and Frank and I were talking, we need to take a step back. And so we originally hired an energy manager, and that morphed into the fact that we needed a facilities coordinator, a facilities director, if we were gonna ever move any of our projects forward. We've forgotten a little bit of that energy management piece. And so I'm going to rely on this person, and it's an earmark, so I don't know when it's coming in, so it may not be before June 30th of next year, is having that person come in and really start to take another look at exactly what our energy usage is in our town buildings. We know we made improvements over where we were back in 2017, but I'm afraid we've let that slip, not having somebody on top of it all of the time. I also think the sustainability coordinator will do exactly what you said, Gus, and take some of those projects that aren't necessarily the big lofty projects that we have at the Energy Committee, but some of the smaller projects that we can get done on a daily basis. That's where I see that person fitting in. And advising us, we're not energy experts. You know, Michael, Frank, and I came to you last year and said, you know, we're futures traders. We're managing the energy market on a daily basis, trying to figure out where to go. We really need somebody who has the expertise to do that, not just us Googling what's the best rate. No, okay, we didn't do that.
Pete, if I could make one other, this is,
Yeah,
I think,
please,
over
go ahead.
above this, is the goal that the state and the town have signed up for is net zero. And you've at least all heard from me about the issue that I think the sequestration of carbon issue is something that the town needs to take on. This is probably a message for the Energy Committee. You don't grow forests in under 30 years. So if we don't have plans for growing forests, but now, or I'm not even sure whether we can't get credit for the forests that we have when I hear like cities like Seattle are getting credit for carbon sequestration. Well, they just started identifying that stuff 2 years ago and already they're getting credit. So my point is, I was making the point before, we should be the ones selling offsets, not buying offsets when we get to 2050. But as I've thought even more about it, it's like if the target is net zero, you not only need to know how much you're consuming, you need to know how much you should be getting credit for in other things like carbon sequestration. And I don't think right now anybody's really tackling that, and I don't have the technical expertise to know exactly what that should be. But if net zero is where we have to be in 2050, then you need to know the positive side of the equation, not just the negative side.
And if we can get credit for planting trees, I mean, there are other benefits for planting trees, which is would be planting trees. A lot of our streets can use street trees, and
Right.
yeah, there's very good reason to be planting trees around town, and it's pretty inexpensive to do as well. So, anything else, guys? Eileen?
Actually, I agree with the comment that you made about Tomcat, that it was a document created by the committee, and I don't believe, because it's just in the last 12 months, we've even started to solidify that, then they just hand it off and say, okay, Christine, take it from here. I think that getting our hands around the sustainability coordinator, exactly what that role is going to consist of, and I think this is something I talked about with Penny when I had my one-on-one with her. Yeah, definitely managing the buildings, right? Because our buildings are the one element in this town that really is it's either gonna make or break 2050. So, some way along, well, I know it's not a goal for you in this calendar year, but as we look at the sustainability coordinator, really honing in on the buildings, the priorities in each building. Some buildings may need different work over another, but once we start to lay that out, I think even from a financial standpoint, we start to really see the real costs that are coming at us. And then certainly, I mean, we're a town that has bought so much land, the 25 acres up off of Elm Street, the Redgate Farms, you'd like to think all of those trees? Yes, right? Because we're not looking to sell-off land, we're a community, when we have the opportunity like Redgate Farm, we're buying it. And so absolutely, if there's some way to make sure that we jump on that, where we have land today that, not that I'm trying to wipe out any open fields, but if we could, especially as after some of the storms we've had, we have lost trees over the last 10 years with ice storms and the wind storms. So if we had areas where we could plant new, that'd be great.
I guess my thought as I hear you say that is that I don't think that we actually manage any of our woods that we have, and we might want to be thinking about our woodlands differently. We might want to actively manage it rather than just let it be.
Mhm.
But I guess I'd like to start planting some trees too, as well. I talked to Penny, and she's happy to have the Energy Committee lead on the Tomcap stuff, so I'm happy to have it reside there. I guess what I was thinking about with the energy, the sustainability position is that I think we need to firm up our 25-year capital plan for the buildings, and that Jerry McCarty started on. He didn't quite finish it.
Mhm.
And hopefully that the facilities people could finish that off and get that so that we have a good roadmap of what we're gonna really need to do, because those roofs are super expensive when they come match us. When I was on the capital budget and saw a fire truck getting requested, I was shocked because it was more than the capital budget. So we need to have those big numbers
Right.
alerted to us so that we know how to plan for them and figure out. So I guess, do we have a motion then to accept these town administrator goals as they have been presented then tonight?
How do you want to handle task B, where it's TBD, if we want to accept the goals? How are we going to just have there you go, right there.
So maybe where, if I can just make a recommendation, where we don't know at what time period in the next, I mean, we're already in September, so I don't know when, between September and June, we're gonna have the earmark for the sustainability coordinator. We're hiring the facilities project manager, who will also assist us in moving our energy projects forward. Maybe a general continue to work with the energy committee to move this forward, which I would be doing anyway, so I don't know if you really need it as a goal, but until we actually have the staffing in place, it may be difficult to put a task associated with that. But it's up to you. But I am planting better clover out front for the town hall, just so you know. I am going to do that. Can't stand it.
That's A, that's not B.
Yeah. So maybe there's no B, maybe there's just an A for this year until June, or as we start putting those in place. It's up to you.
Yeah, we could just take B off for the moment until we figure out something maybe.
If there's no B, so I don't know exactly where we need to land on this, but I kind of agree with the takeoff, what we were discussing before. If all we have is A, which is investigate and implement sustainable landscaping alternatives at the town hall, then the overall goal of maintaining environmental quality and sustainability of our community seems like it's a bit overblown for the fact that we're just doing landscaping around the town hall.
Well, actually, so how about taking off at the town hall? Because, I mean, we were just talking about doing trees throughout the town, not just the town hall, so, I mean, maybe we want to have that be broader than just the town hall. I mean, it'd be nice to get the town hall landscaping ship-shape too, but,
It may be hard to do that in this fiscal year without an appropriation. We can investigate some alternate methods of funding for that. That shouldn't be an issue, but I can't guarantee we can get that done until we get funding in place.
yeah, well, trees are pretty inexpensive. I mean, the last time I bought a tree, it was like $125. It's the planting,
I don't have any money.
doubles the price, and, yeah, all right. Residents can buy a tree for the
But
town.
there are some creative funding sources we can look at for that.
Yep, okay.
How about we look at creating a tree planting program for our residents
Yeah,
with the help of
Sure.
the garden committee?
yep.
Sure.
Yep.
Sawyer will be happy to hear about that, so this is pushed for inventories for some time.
Yes, and we do have a Arbor Day coming up shortly.
I'm constantly.
And a sequoia that needs to be planted if anybody would like to put that in their yard.
Whenever I see the 100-year-old pictures of Main Street with those elm trees on either side in their vase shape and just huge, I keep thinking about trying to get back to that type of streetscape where we have a lot of trees. Well, do we need to do this tonight, Chris, or can we just put this off until our
No,
next
You can
meeting?
put it off to the next meeting.
I mean, one of the things that's occurring to me is that maybe there should be something under this, this heading having to do with somehow working with the Energy Committee to push forward the town goals or something.
The only, on some of those things, Christine needs to do, that's her job. That's part of.
It's
and so
not-
it's
it's-
ki-
yeah.
What I struggle with, it's okay, we can create goals that basically, in narrow sense, say, do your job. And she will probably be able to get 100% accomplishment when we do this, but it's sort of, I look at these goals kind of as, they're not really the 95% of what we want Christine to do, they're the 5% on top of that
Right.
gets at something that helps push the ball farther forward. So I can see the tree planting issue as one, as I was trying to do this, I think the same thing you're thinking, Pete, is there more, given what the overall goal is talking about, is there more that we should be thinking about? And there's, these are just brainstorming ideas, these are not recommendations. The two things that stick in my head is I'm not convinced that we have a very good plan for the maintenance of our fields. I'm thinking particularly up around the state hospital. There was a time when things got cut, but we have a lot of land, and some of it is hayable. They cut hay on it. If you don't manage it, John Thompson 2 years ago pointed out, if you just leave a field alone, the natural evolution of a field
Yeah.
is trees will start to move into it.
Yeah.
So that's one piece, is that field management, independent of all the other stuff we might manage. That's one thing that came to mind. And in the back of my head, for some reason, the issue of sustainability. Now, I know we did the threat assessment, so we actually sort of have the plan around sustainability. I've been, because of several conversations that have come up around climate change, including the one where Sarah brought in the state representative and talked about how sea level change had gone up a foot in Boston. And I asked her, does that mean that Mount Washington is now 6,287 feet above sea level instead of 6,288? And she said, well, no one's ever asked that question. And she said, we measure mean high tide, which is not sea level rise. It's volatility of tide. It's potentially volatility of tidal fluctuations from weather. But if that's the real problem we're experiencing now, then what we should be looking around sustainability and resilience is the ability to withstand more severe weather, not rising water. Now, we're far enough up, it'll take eons to have us worry about rising sea levels, but what I'm getting at is, have we, with this focus on sea level rise not really necessarily being sea level rise, have we not focused on what the real threat of climate change is, which is the volatility of weather, which leads you to sustainability and resilience, but the kinds of things you do to harden land or to make land more resilient is not the same thing as you do to try to hold the ocean sea level back. And in the back of my head, I'm saying, have we really thought about sustainability and environmental sustainability and resilience as comprehensively as we should? Did we kind of go through that drill that the state funded, and did we look at it the wrong way? Because we were looking, I think, a lot at flooding of the Charles River, but there's other things that are happening because of the weather. And so in the back of my mind, not necessarily trying to drive it onto your goal list this year, but in the back of my mind, I'm not convinced that we collectively, not just us, but our society, are even thinking about this the right way. And
Well, when we had the charrette about the threats, the main focus that we determined was the issue of flooding of the Charles River. That's our main topic that we have to deal with in Medfield, because we're not dealing with the rising levels of the ocean at all.
Yeah, but we are dealing with more violent weather. That's
Yeah,
the point.
well,
I
that's
mean,
what's
take a
gonna
walk
lead to
over
the
State
flooding
Hospital.
of the
we went down-
Charles.
I went down a trail, the one that has the Boy Scout
Yeah, and the
bridge,
trail's
and I was
gone.
shocked.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, that's what Penny commented
Yeah.
about, even looking at some of the things that the Energy Committee is looking at for our new structures, is to build these buildings
Right.
to withstand the rain, to withstand the wind. You know, I
Yeah.
just was watching Good Morning America this morning, they were talking about how you can build your home, but how one of the homes in Hawaii, every home around it was destroyed, and theirs stood like there wasn't even a fire, because they built it correctly. So, yeah, it's certainly,
So it feels to me like there's a potential gap. I'm not
Mhm.
necessarily saying that needs to be a goal right now, but I at least want to throw it on the table that the sustainability and resilience, we may not be thinking about it so as broadly as we really ought to. If the true threat is violent weather, not even flooding the Charles. Everybody thinks, water, climate, water's going up, Charles going up, everything's going up, and we gotta worry about floods. And that's, I mean, if we were gonna worry about floods, I think we would look at how could we make more of a floodplain like we did on the Overlook to bring in 1 million gallons more of storage. Are there other opportunities for us to do that? That's
3.5.
3.5, I don't know, been working off 1 million.
so is this regarding the bullet here for her goal, like?
Well, so I threw it out there to say, is there anything that immediately comes to mind for anyone around resilience? That, and again, it's not fixing something, it's identifying the plans or the strategies to address it. And I am offering these strictly in brainstorming mode, not recommendation mode. It just happened, it's been on my mind for a while now.
well, why don't we set this aside and take it up at our next meeting and see if we have come to a little bit more conclusions than to go forward on it and implement it.
So we're 95% there now.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
So the only thing I feel bad about, here we are in October, 1 quarter into fiscal year, still figuring out what the goals are, but I think we can say at this point, we're 95% of the way there, so you know what you need to do to the 95%
Yeah.
mark. And
We're moving
that.
forward on everything else.
Yeah, you're not
And
waiting
we've
for
been
us.
working on it since July 1st, so.
Thank you.
Christine has her own calendar that she's keeping, and,
Good thing somebody's keeping the trains running on schedule.
all right. And then our next item, our third item, discussion and possible appointment of a new school building committee member, and we advertised for interest in this, and we got 2 people that submitted expressions of interest. Gus, do you want to start the discussion of that?
I apologize for throwing a curveball in here, because I should have thought about this. I went back through, the only question I have, so we have 2 people who have expressed interest. From a process standpoint, before I have any opinions, express opinions about those 2, should we include the people who volunteered when we first formed the building committee, several of whom have some form of building experience? Should we have reached out to them to at least ask if they were still interested? If I had volunteered to be on the building committee less than a year ago, and I didn't get picked, I'm not sure I would have necessarily volunteered again, even though I might be willing to serve. But I'm looking and saying, so if we just take the 2 that literally volunteered this time and ignore the ones who volunteered before, is that more like the town being a jerk with the people that volunteered before?
So.
Maybe they don't want to do it, but
So I had the same reaction, Gus, and so I emailed Brittany this afternoon and asked her if she had reached out to those people, and she had not. And so I emailed to a number of them. I didn't email to all of them, because I emailed to the ones that were the top 4 or 5 choices that I had. And I heard back from one of them, and I gave them like a 3-hour window. If you're interested, you have to get back to me fast. And he was interested until he heard, and he asked how much time it would take. And when I told him it was a lot, he said, employment, family, thank you, maybe another time. He did thank the select board for what we do, so.
Do you want to hold this until the 17th?
I would I mean, if the sensitivity is, I actually think we should.
Yeah, that's fine.
I
Then,
think we should give the people that have volunteered in the past, it's
Yep.
just a courtesy to ask them. You've asked one, I said no. As long as we know, as opposed to simply ignore them, it's like, well, you missed that one, and we didn't even bother reaching out to you on this one. I think we should reach out to them out of respect.
yep, I agree. How about you?
I mean, I'm not adamantly opposed. I feel like, you know, people, if you were paying attention to the school building committee before, and even if you didn't get selected, my gut is you're still paying attention. And now they hear that Robert Donahue has stepped down. I feel like if they were interested, they've had a solid month to apply. So if we wanna reach out, I'm not adamantly opposed. I just feel like if, we get two people that stepped up in the moment they heard, and we had a deadline, and
Well, but on the other hand, if you volunteered at the end of last year when we were looking, say, I volunteered, you know I wanna do this. What, now you're saying, well, I didn't meet your administrative?
well, maybe they've changed their mind at this
Well,
point, because, I mean, the same way we educated before, we educated again, and
Right.
they didn't step up. And I was saying I think I was saying this to Christine when we first started doing this again, I'm like, I wonder if people who didn't get selected are like, okay, forget it, you know, I'll move on. If you guys feel like you wanna reach out and say,
Yeah.
you know, is another chance?
Well.
And I think it
you're-
would be the ones that we were looking at for the select board?
Yeah, my
Yes.
own view is it's the one that we looked at for the select board. I have them on the spreadsheet
Okay.
there, which I can actually give you the spreadsheet if you want. And my comments here have nothing to do with
Well, I was,
denigrating the two people who have stepped forward. In fact, I'm pretty impressed. One of them, I think, moved here in June.
right,
And that's pretty impressive that anybody, you know, whether this is the right spot or whether the best candidate for this is irrelevant. This is somebody who's only been here for 3 months, who's saying, look, I wanna pitch in and help the town.
well, and I know he's
So-
already reached out to the school building committee himself, and has found out it's a lot of work, and he's like, all right, I'm ready, I'm not gonna shy away from that. And that's the one thing I did hear from the school building committee, because I said, all right, you have an opening, is there a spot there that, you know, is there a skill set you're looking for? They were like, time, we need someone that's
Mhm.
willing to give the time. So, I mean, that's why when the one gentleman, said to the member, yeah, that's not gonna make me shy away, versus, you know, the candidates of the gentleman you talked to said, if it's gonna be that much time, I just don't have the bandwidth on it, and you can't knock that.
So we're meeting in 2 weeks. Why don't we put this over and make the appointment in
Okay.
2 weeks then?
Okay.
And just have the courtesy of officially touching base with the people that I gave just a matter of
So,
a couple
do you-
hours to.
So there's a full set, should this be a
Well,
communication
yeah, let's
from
make
the
sure we're
town?
reaching out to,
I can have Brittany
we
reach
agreed
out
that
to
we're
her.
going to reach out to people, not just a random run,
No,
that,
just-
that it's a set,
just-
if
yeah.
we're putting off the vote tonight, I'm doing
Right.
it for the names that were on there
Right.
before,
Right.
and no one else other than the two that are in there right
Anybody
now.
wants to see the names that were there, this was, I think you actually have a copy of the spreadsheet, but I can forward it to you, but it's the ones in yellow under the select board appointments. are the
Yes,
ones I'm
it's them and the two, and that's
And
it.
plus the two, that's
Okay.
it, yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't reopen new people to volunteer. You kind of said the magic words there, Eileen. You said, well, you know, how do we know whether they want to still do it? It's like, well, that's the point, right? We don't know whether they want to still do it, so it's worth asking. Because they may say, well, you already know.
Well, I think it's, so I would assume, maybe I shouldn't use the word assume, will Brittany send out an email just saying, just a reminder? I don't want it to come from one of us to look like we're,
I agree,
it should be
yeah.
coming
No,
from.
no, I'll have
Yeah.
Brittany sent out.
Okay,
That's right.
Yep.
It'd be the full set.
I think that keeps it very neutral.
Yep, that's fine.
If you want that, you can have it.
Yes, I'll take that. Anybody in yellow?
The yellow, not anybody in yellow, anybody in the select board column in yellow.
In yellow,
Yeah.
perfect. I will
And
make
you
sure
can
she
actually
gets
see
that.
some of the background comments.
Perfect.
And I'll send Brittany a copy of, I'll let her know which people I contacted this afternoon. Okay, our next item then is action items. Discussion and potential vote on Norfolk County ARPA allocations. A, reimbursement of FY '23 capital purchases. B, reimbursements of water and sewer projects. Chris?
So one of the things, as you know, we've been talking about ARPA for a while. And when I last reported to you, we had approximately $650,000 left that we were planning on using for water and sewer and the treatment plant upgrades because it's coming from Norfolk County. I attended 2 meetings in the last 2 weeks where there was concern if we had not committed the funds from ARPA, they were going to be clawed back. And part of that was in light of the budget situation going on currently in the federal budget. So we started thinking when I got back from that meeting, we really need to move forward on this. You have till the end of '24 to commit these funds, but we were going through, and while we're waiting for the results of the wastewater treatment plant, we were looking back at a couple of things. And in fiscal year '22, we appropriated $357,000 for the capital budget. In fiscal year '23, we actually held, and we did 0 towards the capital budget because we were concerned about Norfolk County and their interpretation of the ARPA. So we held everything in '23. However, if you read my comments below the capital budget in '23, I make a statement that we will use ARPA funding if allowable. Fast forward a little bit, fiscal year '24 and fiscal year '25, which we're just entering, you committed $350,000 for capital to each. So we went back and we took a look at fiscal year '23 for capital. And we identified 2 projects from that capital expenditure. One was the front end loader for DPW at $190,000, and one was a vehicle replacement for facilities at just over $50,000. Those are eligible through our Norfolk County for ARPA expenses. If you voted tonight for that $240,336, that money would be a reimbursement to us and would go back into the capital stabilization fund. So as we work towards finalizing what our water and sewer projects and our wastewater treatment plant projects would be, I'm recommending to you that you put that money towards the fiscal year '23 capital budget for those items that have already been purchased.
Yeah, that's fine with me too. Eileen?
That works for me.
Okay.
Great.
So, motion.
Yeah, a motion for $240,336.25 from ARPA expenditures out of Norfolk County.
Okay, so motion to approve, are we transferring or
Nope, you're just voting to commit $240,336.25.
voting, a motion to commit $240,336.25 from ARPA funds.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. And then Frank and I have a meeting with Bill Harvey and the Water and Sewer Board to finalize the remaining expenditures from the Norfolk County allocation. But I know we have a 90-day budget in hand now from the federal government, but there's some concern about that money. So I think there's some urgency for us to at least commit those funds and show the county that we do have a plan for them.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
It's kind of like a seagull on the beach when they fight over the crab. The first one that swallows is the one that wins the battle here.
I know. We're being penalized for thinking about this in a rational way, so not rushing it, but
Our
I'll
next,
stay off my soapbox for now.
our next item is a request from the Medfield Garden Club for $2,500 to beautify the 20 municipal garden sites throughout the town that they so lovingly take care of for us. It's one of my favorite things about Medfield is the garden club sites.
I would agree.
And by extension, the garden club.
Yes, I don't know if anybody had a chance to see the new planters this summer that we had put in front of the town hall. They're absolutely beautiful. We've had so many nice comments on them. They've actually finally fit the scale of the building, and they're just perfect.
Oh, good.
They required a lot more soil than we ever anticipated, but they're fantastic. And this money is an annual request from the Medfield Garden Club, and we had actually already put money towards our economic development through ARPA, so this funding request would come through ARPA as well.
Oh, good. So motion.
You've already approved that.
Do you want to go ahead with the motion then,
So motion to
Eileen?
approve the Medfield Garden Club's request for $2,500 to beautify the 20 municipal garden sites throughout the town.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sixth item on our agenda is a request from the Boy Scout Troop 89 to replace signs at the following locations to announce the annual Christmas tree pickup and recycling program. First, the transfer station, second, the intersection of Main and North, and third, the intersection of South Street and 27. And all request to transport trees to the, and request to transport the trees to the transfer station for recycling. Any questions, comments, or do we have a motion?
All right, motion. This is when we know we're getting close to Christmas, when we start talking about Christmas trees. All right, request from, motion to approve the request from Boy Scout Troop 89 to place signs at the following locations to announce the annual Christmas tree pickup and recycling program at the transfer station, at the intersection of Main and North, intersection of South Street and Route 27, and request to transport the trees to the transfer station for recycling.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 7, request from trustees of the reservations for a one-day beer and wine permit for Friday, October 13, from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. for Scary Movie Night in Rocky Woods. Questions, comments, or a motion?
Do we know the movie?
No.
I don't know if we know what the movie is.
See how scary it is.
Yeah.
It's probably less scary when you've drunk enough beer and wine to feel.
So I will motion, yes? You good with it?
Yes, please.
To approve the request from the trustees of reservations for a one-day beer and wine permit on Friday, October 13th, from 8 to 11 p.m. for Scary Movie Night in Rocky Woods.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Citizen comments, anything signed up, Chris?
Nope, and I don't have any questions from anybody attending the meeting currently.
And so, can you just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just microphone, otherwise everyone at home's gonna say, what did she say?
My name's Andrea Sullivan, 7 Pine Grove Road. And I just have a question. I've just been interested. I saw that there was an email or a letter that came out from, it looks like, Maura Healy on September 27, 2023, to you, Christine, with $200,000, I think, all around total for the Medfield Green Communities Competitive Grant application. And I was just curious, it said here $10,000 for the town for administrative assistance, because I was reading about ARPA, and I'm just kind of curious where that particular $10,000 went in the budget. Like,
So that goes, we hired Susan McPhee, who's been operating as our sustainability consultant. She's been helping us with the green communities. We take that $10,000 and we appropriate that towards her contract.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
great.
So I think in the budget itself, we appropriate $25,000, and then we take the $10,000 from the green community. So her contract is a not to exceed for $35,000.
Okay. And the other question I had overall, and maybe I need to just talk to you one-on-one just to understand this better instead of taking up the committee's time, is I'm just interested to understand how much ARPA money Medfield has taken total to date since March of 2021, and why we chose to use ARPA money as opposed to using our own money. And then my third question would be, what are the strings that are attached by the federal government for taking that money
So,
to the state, to the town of Medfield?
So I can start with the last one first. The strings are, well, let me start at the very beginning. There's actually two, what we call pots of money we got for ARPA. And one came to us directly from the Treasury. And there were no limitations on spending that because it was under $10 million. And I believe, hold on, I just put my papers away, so I want to give you the actual numbers. From the Treasury, we received a little over $1.3 million. And then the other portion of our money, because we're in Norfolk County, and Norfolk County is an active county, then little over $2.4 million went to the county. And then the county is in charge of distributing that money to us. But instead of getting it all at once, we have to vote these individual projects to be approved
Okay.
for that.
Was this 200,000 part of that individual project, or is this separate?
Green Communities is completely separate.
Okay. And
Yep.
what is that you called Norfolk County? What kind of?
It's an active county.
What does that mean exactly?
They're an actually county government. So they run the registry of deeds, they have the district court, they're actually a full functioning county. Otherwise, there are some counties in Western Mass, those counties were dissolved. So those towns that were in those counties got their entire allotment of ARPA money through the federal government, through the Treasury. And because for most of them it was less than $10 million, did not have to have the strings attached that we have going through the county.
Got it. So the strings that we would have attached are through Norfolk County, not us individually directly as one town. It's part of a collective.
Two. So the ones that we have directly from the Treasury, our strings attached are that we have to actually appropriate the money for eligible projects, and that we then we are subject to an audit at some point of that funding.
Okay.
And that's same for Norfolk County.
So it doesn't tie to any other things like MBTA or 40B or anything of that like?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Thank you.
No,
That's
you're
really
welcome.
helpful.
And I'm happy, we're both happy to sit down and talk to you about all of this. And we actually have a page on our website that lists all of the ARPA projects that we've funded.
Okay, great. I'll
Yep.
check it out. Thank
But
you
I'm-
very much.
Stop by and see me. Let's
I love
talk
it.
more
Thank
about
you.
it.
A little nerd over here.
There was
Thanks.
one important question that you didn't answer. You asked,
Did I miss one? I'm
why
sorry.
did we use ARPA funds instead of our town funds? And-
Oh,
Yes, I'm very interested in that.
when I use town funds, then I am using your taxpayer dollars. I was allowed to use these ARPA funds for these projects with no tax impact to you. So they were one-time revenues that came to the town.
Okay. My understanding is that ARPA money is also COVID relief funding. So how is like a insulation project or a heat pump for the library that we must have predicted
Green
part of
Communities
that?
has nothing to do with ARPA.
Okay.
It's a completely separate program.
Okay.
The
Yeah,
green-
nothing to do with ARPA.
Okay. All right. So
Yep.
we're not using ARPA funding for buildings of any kind
We have not to date, I'm trying to think.
or land.
No. We've used it, so there are specific categories that you have to use it for. And we did use some of it for COVID relief. We funded the public health nurse. We funded COVID testing. I'm trying to think what else, direct COVID. Picnic tables, we use CARES funding. Love those.
Cares, okay.
But the Hinckley Playground qualified under COVID relief.
Okay.
But-
Premium pay.
Premium pay for our employees who had to work on the front lines during COVID, during that first 6 months. All of those were covered with the ARPA funding.
Okay. So no land-related things.
No.
Necessarily.
Nope.
All right.
And there's
Wonderful.
really specific categories in which you are allowed to spend that, and I'd be happy to go over all those with you.
Great. I appreciate it. Thank you
No,
very
no,
much.
not a problem.
Sorry to take you all time.
No, that's fine. And the Green Communities Grant, the 200,000 that you were referencing, that Maura Healy wrote about, is a competitive state financing grant for energy and environmental things. And so that's money that primarily, I think, that the Energy Committee probably got us, did they?
I'm sorry? What was
The Green Communities Grant.
That's the one Amy and Susan and the Energy Committee collaborate on to submit.
Because I hear a lot about that at the Energy Committee meetings. I know that there are strict deadlines, and one of the odd things about the Green Communities grants is that you actually have to spend the money from the prior grants before you can apply for new ones, and so there's always a rush to finish the prior projects and get them completed so we can qualify for the new round of money, because it's substantial amounts of money. 200,000 is a lot of money.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks for coming. So, one of the things that you and I talked about was the citizen comment. Maybe you could just explain to people how they get on the citizen comment.
So our agenda policy currently lists that if you are going to be on citizen comment, that you register at the beginning of the meeting and let us know the topic you're going to talk about. Because those topics are not on the agenda, then the board is really only allowed to take those comments in, but cannot solicit feedback. And then it's up to the board to recognize those comments and put them on a following agenda. If someone is coming in who would like to make a citizen's comment about a department head or an issue they have with the department, we ask that you give us a 48-hour notice that we can have that department adhere to have that discussion. But again, if you can get it to me 48 hours in advance, we'll have it as an actual agenda topic.
And if someone wants to be on the citizen comment list, they should just email to you or to Brittany?
They can just email us, or at the beginning of the meeting, they can either let me know when they get here, or if they're online, just let us know at the beginning of the meeting they'd like to register and have it be
Okay.
recognized during citizen comment.
All right, thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda. We've got 2 items. The Medfield Music Association requests permission to post signs at the usual locations for 2 weeks, starting October 22, to advertise ticket sales for Spaghetti with Santa, an annual occurrence. And secondly, Boston Elite Basketball requests permission to post signs at the intersection of North and Main for 2 weeks, starting October 9, to advertise registration for basketball camps, clinics, and lessons. Do we have
Is that, just curious, that second one, is that the thing that the Kingsbury Club hosted? Remember,
I don't think so.
it's a different thing, okay.
Well, I was thinking about that too, because that was a professional, female.
Yeah, they were
yeah.
hosting that professional league for a little while there.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if this is
the-
different,
Okay, this
yeah.
is different, okay. Okay.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We've got meeting minutes, and I know one select board member that hasn't looked at them yet, so we'll put those off. Town administrator updates.
Just a couple things. You'll have a packet we handed you tonight, just to let you know, I alluded to it at the beginning of my comments, but we have kicked off a new budget process this year with the warrant committee, and so we actually started meeting last Tuesday, and so I can officially say that Frank and I are busy every Tuesday night until town meeting in May. It's a budget process that I know all of you who have served on the warrant committee have heard me talk about how we were going to get to this, but we have a new timeline. We're meeting earlier, and we kicked it off with a revenue consensus, which you will see in here as well. So the warrant committee has met with Frank and I, the chairs, I should say, have met with Frank and I believe they have met also with Dr. Marsden and Michael LaFrancesca to talk about our anticipated revenue coming in and what the increases that would be allotted to the school department and the town departments. So we are starting this budget process staying within Proposition 2.5. If there are requests that go over and above this, then we will have to discuss how those will be paid for. But our prior budget process has always become sometimes antagonistic, sometimes stressful, and causes a lot of angst for the department heads as they submit their budget and they don't find out until March if those items are going to be cut. So we're starting this process off at the beginning. So I think we're kind of just flipping it in reverse, and I think it'll be much smoother for everybody and a lot less angst for everybody to work through. So we're excited to kick that off with the warrant committee and really happy everybody has bought into this process and the timeline. I know we're meeting a lot earlier than we have in the past, so it's a little change for everybody. And, you know, municipal government, we love change. So we're all getting used to it, but it's going to be great. The other thing is I just want to remind everybody that there was an issue that came up when we had the dog bylaw forum a couple weeks ago, and that is just a friendly reminder to everybody that there are no dogs allowed in the cemetery. I actually took a walk through the cemetery today and did see people with their dogs, so the chief has sent Jenny up there to remind people, but so we put some stuff out on social media, but we'd just like to remind everybody that there are no dogs allowed to be walked in the cemetery, and we appreciate everybody's cooperation on that. And while we were out for a walk, I would just like to remind everybody to stop for pedestrians in the crosswalk. That's all. Thank you.
I think our pedestrian walk times are require brisk walking to get
Yes,
across out here
yes.
at North and Main. So one of the things that, when I started as the chair of the select board this year, Chris and I sat down and I said I'd like to plan out the meetings for the whole year that I'm going to be chair, and one of the things that she gave me was her budget calendar, which I was just delighted to see that she'd already planned ahead with a lot of the meetings, so. And that's part of what she was talking about, that there's a lot of planning going on behind the scenes, in addition to her stated goals. Let's see, we've got next meeting dates here listed. There are too many to go through, so we'll go to select board member reports.
Can I do one quick thing on the website? It still shows us having a meeting on October 31st, and we're not.
We'll take that off.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'm throwing it off.
Mr. Murby, please report.
Yeah, quiet couple of weeks, which was kind of nice, but two items. One, Steve Callahan and I had a phone call. This is a follow-up to the CPA discussions that we've had, and trying to kind of get in front of the question, should we put the CPA on the warrant for next May's town meeting? And as I think people already know, I've actually shifted my view of the CPA itself, given that I think there's some changes that were made structurally to it that made it more attractive. But my view is also that I would like to see the taxpayers have an option of restructuring our tax structure to adopt the CPA, but also to say without increasing the taxes. So that was the issue of having an underride on the normal tax levy that offsets. And if they don't want to do it, and they just say, we don't mind you taxing us more, that's fine. My thought originally was to see if the warrant committee could kind of look at the CPA. My superficial position here, there's implications, one of which is, I think what you brought up, Christine, as well. If you adopt the CPA at a town meeting and it goes into effect immediately, the underride potentially causes the balanced budget and everything to not be balanced.
Right.
And then on top of that, you have if you didn't do anything to control it, you could potentially not have an acceptance of the CPA, but then have an underride article, which was not my intent, to simply drive the limit down. So there's a few mechanical things around that. Some of those, in talking with Steve, it sounded like possibly if you had an adoption with and even an underride that could go with it, but it wouldn't be the current upcoming fiscal year, it would actually be another year out, so that you could let the budget cycle go through. That's one thing. The second issue that I was trying to get on the warrant committee's agenda, but I don't think it went. I think it came back to the town and to you and the finance folks. The question is, you can do 1 or 2, 3%, or 3% surcharges. Conceptually, if the CPA makes sense at all, it makes 3 times as much sense if you do 1%, given the way the matches work, but not if the 3% generates more money to go into the buckets than you would have spent in those buckets anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of hoping that the warrant committee might look at that, and the thought was that actually the town is in a better position to model that and less. That's a structural question. If you were gonna have an article, what would it be? Would it be 1, 2, or 3% surcharge? There's some other minor things around what part of everybody's value is exempt from the, first 100,000 doesn't count or something like that. But anyway, I talked with Steve on that, and it sounds like in spirit they would be happy to help us, but they're not really about to take up the entire thing of recommending a structure or against. And part of that's to preserve their own independence when the time comes to weigh in on the article.
Not to go into a detailed discussion of CPA, however, there's more significance than just the difference of 1, 2, 3%. If you go in at 3%, and the funds collected by the state are not adequate to fully compensate everybody, they go through a series, there's an initial distribution, and then those communities who have adopted 3% are eligible for additional distributions. All as part of the same process.
So there's more money, if you go at 3%, you're in for more.
That's correct.
So that's why it's always seemed to me that if you're gonna do it and accept the idea that it's a tax savings, you might as well do the 3% and get the extra
It's the way it's worked, it's been not insignificant. One year as an example, recent year, I think Medway picked up an additional $55,000 because of the 3.
Mark is an expert, he serves on are you the chair of the
Yes.
committee in Medway, the CPA committee? Mr. Mark, oh my goodness. Sorrow.
I know I haven't been here in a while, so you forgot my name, so it's all right.
I forgot who
Hey,
you were,
flashbacks to
yeah.
Saturday Night Live just said, Mr. Bill.
Bill Massaro, 36 Hampton Way. I've raised this question before. I mean, I've heard that the state supposedly has eased up on the requirements where you have to spend the money, but at the same time, I keep seeing articles in the Globe about towns that are in trouble because they didn't spend it where they were supposed to spend it. So I would hope that however this goes forward, that whether it's the warrant committee or a new committee, whatever, that they look at, are we getting money that we need, or are we getting money for things that we don't need, and then we have to spend that money for those things? So this is very important. It was my objection way back when, and again, it's historic preservation, it's affordable housing. I forget what the third one is.
Open space.
Open space, right?
And recreation.
Right.
Open space and recreation.
So again, I mean, we ought to at least have an idea of what our requirements are in those areas going forward. I don't care about getting an underwrite or anything else, and I may not be here for any long-term things anyway. Well, I'm aging out in front of your very eyes, but anyway. So again,
announcing a move, Bill.
I just would emphasize, let's make sure that we're going to get money that we can spend,
Right.
and not spend it on things that we don't need.
Yeah, I think that's a preliminary decision to be made. Do we really spend money in these 3 buckets or not? And if we don't, we maybe shouldn't be doing it. But if we do spend money and are thinking that we're going to in the future, then it makes sense to pick up the state matching money.
Thank you.
And Bill, as you know, I was I have been opposed to this for years. The fact that it seemed like the rules had loosened up to where I could see my way clear to the possibility that some amount of money at least would be actually a true way of funding things we're gonna pay for anyway. But I don't know yet. That's why I want the study, yeah.
Mr. Sorrell, please.
So the expenditure or set aside for future expenditure is 10% for each of the three categories. And there's not much question, at least historic resources. We've got properties now that we are in control of that we don't have monies to make, to even to stabilize. Open space and recreation, that's where they made it more flexible. You don't have to have acquired the land with CPC funds in the first place to make improvements to it through that use of funds. So the only thing that's left is community housing, but where we have an affordable housing trust, if you're trying to work with a developer or a nonprofit, whatever, there's situations where having funds to put in the pot can facilitate a project.
Yeah, and Mark, the part that the concern I have around the affordable housing, assuming the state hospital development goes ahead, is we will go from being just a little shy of 10%, which is the goal for 40B affordable, to 17%. And so if you have a bucket for affordable housing, depending on how broadly that bucket can be used, we'll already have overshot the 10% of 40B affordable, and then we'll have a bucket for what? That's the thing that worries me, but.
The only thing is, there's nothing etched in stone about that 10%, and I've had discussions with colleagues that at some point, the state may deem that it's necessary to increase that amount from 10%, so whatever you can do to insulate yourself is probably in your interest.
If I can make a comment, again, if I may.
Sure,
I
please.
thought you were talking about the 10% mandatory in each one of these categories.
No,
Okay.
the 40B.
Again, so last week there was an article about Boston. They raised the affordable housing content for developers. It was at 13%, and they just raised it to 17%, which conjures up images of that working its way out into the suburban areas as well. So I agree with Mark on the fact that 10% is not cast. But again, it comes down to what do we need?
So I am in favor of an economically diversified town, but I will say for those who own houses, who have made the argument around school spending that it helps grow real estate prices, which is a return on houses, you need to start connecting the dots. Because if the state's programs are to continually introduce lower cost housing into a high-performing town, there are fewer and fewer people who will be picking up the tab for what it takes to stay high-performing. I see no other implication for that if the state abuses that trend than the fact that, okay, every town will revert to the mean because there won't be anybody around that'll stick around to kind of just keep the head above the water of an ever increasingly heavy body that has to be kept afloat. It's work, it's fine, diversification is good. I think that when we moved here, this was not a top affluent town. In fact, for years, this was identified as the town people moved to because they had a great school system and it was a place they could afford, unlike all the towns that we now are having as our comparator towns. And we're right up there with them because we've had more affluence. But that trend is basically going to dilute the market. People need to connect those dots if they actually are worried about the value of their house prices at some point.
I would just share input that I received from former Select Board member Richard DeSorga, who lives in Mashpee now, and he sent me a set of materials about the CPA in Mashpee. And the summary is basically that they've put in 20 million of their own money, 21 million it looks like of their own money, and they've gotten 9 million from the state, and so since 2005. So they've gotten 9 million of state money without.
But what matters on that is not what they got since 2005, because I think there were 100% matches in those first couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
What matters is what maybe they got over the last 5 years or 3 years.
Well, the last couple of years, the state, with budget surpluses, has injected big chunks of money over and above what they're collecting at the registry where they raise the rates. That was pulled this year. So that was one shocker for those of us who were community preservation, who were already in. We didn't get the anticipated money. It was in there and they pulled it out, probably in reaction to other budget crises that were.
So what's the match that you expect to get this year?
I haven't seen projections yet from this, the umbrella lobbying group is the Community Preservation Coalition. You can go on their website.
It's a great
I
website.
haven't seen anything as to what the projections are, other than they would be, they're not gonna get the 20 million that they had lobbied for.
Hmm.
Interesting.
That's interesting. Yeah.
All right, anything else, Gus?
You all got to cover the same thing when we were all at Becca Roush's town hall meeting at the Needham Town Hall last night. I thought it was well done. You know, it was an hour long, so it was kind of a cordial, high-level review of many things, but I thought it was well done. Thought she handled it well, and she got a few questions that she handled well. That's it.
That's it, Eileen?
All right, so speaking of the dog forum, I did go to that, which was the Thursday following, or Wednesday following our last select board meeting. Really well attended. What made me really happy is that everyone that attended recognized that this is not an easy topic, right? I mean, there's no easy solution to juggle dogs on leash, dogs off leash, where it can be, where it can't be. But a lot of good feedback from residents that live right along the Wheelock area, people that live along the state hospital area. The committee itself brought some great ideas from Frank, who did a field trip over to Newton and learned that Newton generates about $250,000 a year with dog license, medallion license, various revenue generators that enable them to have dedicated people under I believe the police department to go monitor the different dog areas, right? So the way I think the committee is looking at it is the plan is to bring something to the select board that will address off-leash and on-leash and remove voice recall, right? So that removing voice recall would potentially make it easier for the police, because that way you're either dogs on leash or off leash, there's no gray area. And then defining where in the town we would have authorized off-leash areas. So again, they're gonna bring some ideas to us, and then we can sort through it and see if we can put together a warrant article. But then it's really a crawl, walk, run. They have some really good ideas. They're not gonna change everything overnight, but if we tweak the bylaw by addressing potentially removing voice recall, and then look at what we could be doing at increasing fees for non-residents, for professional dog walkers, out-of-town professional dog walkers, because what was brought to our attention is the state hospital has become like one of the only areas in this very large suburban section of Boston that lets dog walkers with 10 dogs be off leash and do it. So we're getting a lot of people in, which has created some of the chaos. So I thought they did a great job. I thought everyone was super respectful to the committee. So it was a very good forum, and I look forward to seeing what they bring forward. Then that was a Wednesday night. The next night, I sat in with Christine on the Concom meeting. Christian had a chance to talk with the conversation committee about the rail trail and some of the things that were done. And I think we have a resolution.
We'll file a notice of intent before the end of this calendar year to figure out how we're going to plan for the beaver deceivers and that new bridge.
Okay, awesome. And then I don't think we've been together since Medfield Day. Yes, no?
I don't think
No.
so.
So I attended Medfield Day. I'm so happy for everyone in Memo that the rain held off. It spit a little, but it looked really well attended. All the high school kids that had their booths, all the different committees around town that want to educate. I was so happy that it spit a little, and then just as it was time to wrap up, I think we got a little bit more rain. But I would say, in my opinion, it looked like Medfield Day was a good day. Good time to connect with a variety of citizens, so really fun day. Kudos to Memo. As you just mentioned, I was at the Becca Roush, Senator Roush's town hall last night. Good dialogue, just nice update. I didn't realize that she was in town that morning. She was doing office hours over at the library. So, I didn't even know she was doing that.
We didn't know that
Yeah,
either.
she's like, I
Yeah.
don't know, she's like, I have standing appointments, so wasn't something I was supposed to know, but I heard and I was like, oh, that's good to know she does that. I have an Affordable Housing Trust meeting this coming Thursday. And then, I do want to, as you were talking about kind of giving people a heads up, now that we've talked about Christmas trees and having, spaghetti with Santa, I'll put it out there, I know I got my email that the Angel Run registration is open, so, anyone interested in doing the Angel Run?
December 3.
December 3rd, yes. And on that note, that's what I got.
Okay, I was gonna just touch on the Green Communities grants, the 200,000 again. That was so nice to see. I did go to the Dog Control Bylaw Committee meeting on Zoom, and I also submitted some ideas to them and some documents to them to consider. I thought that, as you said, that Medfield Day just worked out really perfectly, given the forecast for the rain. I just thought they really dodged a bullet, and it was a very nice day, nice event. Medfield Foundation had a meeting that I went to, and after the Senator Roush event in Needham last night, I went to the Medfield Historical Society's meeting, and they showed a film on Norumbega Park in Auburndale, where I'd worked for 10 years. So that was especially interesting to me. And there was actually a guy who seemed to be behind the film that I realized when I saw him that I knew him from having worked in Auburndale all those years ago. And then the last thing is, if you need any consultation on clover, Deb and I have been growing clover now for a year, so we're almost clover experts. We think we are. So we're dangerous.
Intentionally growing it, or just loves your garden?
Well, so the full story is that my town wouldn't let me, I twice had to replace half of my lawn, and it was so much work that I purchased an irrigation system because I didn't want to do it again. But 2 summers ago, my town wouldn't allow me to use my irrigation system, so half my lawn died again.
You should get in touch with the select board on that.
And,
You shouldn't put up with that.
I think we can take you at citizens' comment.
So a year ago, Deb and I planted clover. And so that half of my lawn, I basically didn't mow this summer. So it worked out very well. We did buy micro clover, and we bought regular clover. The micro clover is way more expensive. And we were stupid enough to just spread it all at the same time, so we have no idea where the micro clover is, because the regular clover is taller.
Which one do the rabbits prefer?
We have deer in our yard all the time now, and the rabbits like it too, yeah. And frogs, I see a lot of frogs. I haven't seen frogs for years, but they seem to like clover too. So I recommend clover. And the informational, there were some odd things that Comcast was doing with names and things, but I don't think anybody cares about that, so. They have to change their schedules, and apparently they need to tell us about it, so it ends up in our informational.
They're required to tell us.
Watch out your next where all the westerns are. I wanna kind of track that one. Grit, did they move Grit? I don't think they moved Grit. I think it was Ian.
They moved everything 2 months ago, 3 months ago.
I watched a Paul Newman movie from like '67 in the past week, and was really just surprised at how much I liked it. Hombre, it was called. Okay, do we have a motion to,
Motion to adjourn.
thank you.
I'd like to know his name.
Do I have a second to my motion?
I don't know, there's a little bit of movie trivia going on here. You might wanna- Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
That way Mike does not have to stay here if you guys wanna talk about movies.
I mean, speaking of movies, I just looked up on the trustees' website. It is Friday the 13th, Part 7, New Blood.
Jesus.
And Friday the
Oh, man.
13th, Part 8,
I just can't-
Jason Takes Manhattan.